We all know that feeling of finishing an amazing show and wishing there were more episodes, more seasons, more of the same satisfying vibes. When I finished White Lotus season 3, I was like, okay, now that I've been thoroughly disturbed and maybe shed a few tears for some of the characters, I will need several more stories about rich people behaving badly in beautiful places. Here are 5 novels that fit the bill. If you're a fan of The White Lotus, you might like these books too. The first one is The Privileges by Jonathan D. This novel follows a young couple who get married in their early 20s and almost immediately have 2 kids. The husband, Adam, is a wannabe finance bro who's willing to do whatever it takes to get ahead. Cynthia, the wife, is something of a mystery, and she's willing to support whatever Adam chooses to do. A few less than ethical decisions later, they become super rich. The novel follows them through the next few decades as they inhabit their lives as rich people and as their kids grow up. The story provides both a healthy dose of voyeurism as well as a look into the moral emptiness of the lives of the wealthy. It's both super entertaining and well written. The second book is Under the Influence by Joyce Maynard. We are introduced to a woman in her 30s, Helen, and she is going through a really tough time in her life. She had a DUI conviction, and that caused her to lose custody of her 8-year-old son, Oliver, to her ex-husband. She has thousands of dollars in debt to her divorce lawyer. She once had artistic aspirations, but now works in an uninspiring day job as a photographer at a local mall. To make extra money, she takes on catering gigs, and one day she's at a fancy catered party and she meets a very charismatic, wealthy woman named Ava. Most people overlook Helen, but Ava seems to really see her for who she is. They strike up a friendship, and Helen starts hanging out at Ava's beautiful home, which is full of expensive art and beautiful clothing. Ava seems to really take a liking to Helen. She hires her for some freelance photography gigs, and she gives her life advice. She even gives her some of her gorgeous clothes. Helen is also very much enthralled by Ava's relationship with her husband, Swift, who's this very extroverted guy, always the center of attention, best friends with everybody, and she just thinks these two seem like the coolest people around. Helen kind of starts to let Ava and Swift take over her life. She stops hanging out with a previous friend of hers, and she allows them even to comment on who she dates. She even starts bringing her son over to their house, giving up precious time with him alone on the weekends when he's allowed to visit. Eventually, lines are crossed and things end up in disaster. The third book is The Seduction of Water by Carol Goodman. Our protagonist, Iris, is a writer who is struggling to eke out an existence in New York City. Although she does enjoy her teaching gigs, not many other things are going great for her in life. She has a longtime boyfriend who refuses to really commit to her. She hasn't finished her graduate school dissertation, and she has a lot of trouble getting her writing published. Her career is overshadowed by the legacy of her late mother, who was a very famous author and wrote 2 hugely popular novels. But her mother passed away in a tragic accident before she completed the final novel in what was supposed to be a trilogy, and it's left all of her fans wondering for years what the conclusion would have been. One day, Iris decides to write a short piece reminiscing about her mother. Her mother's previous agent sees it and becomes very intrigued. She offers to take Iris on if Iris can write more about her mother and potentially even discover the lost manuscript. We learn that Iris's parents used to work at a hotel in upstate New York, and so it's possible that the manuscript might be stashed there somewhere. The hotel used to be a famous resort for wealthy people back in the day, but it's become less popular over the years and it's fallen into disrepair. However, around the same time that Iris is considering going up there to look for the manuscript, it comes under new management. It's purchased by a guy who owns this very fancy hotel chain in Europe, and he is going to refurbish this hotel and reintroduce it to his wealthy clients so that they'll come from all over the world to the Catskills, and this summer is going to be the hotel's grand opening. Iris manages to get the job as manager, and she plans to go up there and start this career in the hotel business at the same time as writing her own pieces and looking for her mother's lost manuscript. While she's there, she ends up learning some shocking secrets about her family, and things get very dangerous for Iris indeed. This story is as much fun for the twists and turns and the plot as it is for the setting of an old-school luxury hotel deep in the rural Catskills. The next one is The Absolutes by Molly Decter. This novel starts out with a young woman, Nora, who goes to study abroad in Italy during her high school years with some distant relatives. While she's there, she develops a rather complicated relationship with a young woman her age, and she also meets the man who she ends up becoming truly obsessed with. Niccolo is a young man from an old, wealthy Italian family, and his father owns a business in energy and infrastructure superstructure. This is the kind of guy whose charisma lingers with you for years, fueled by the briefest of interactions. They meet for just a few minutes at a ski resort, and it makes a huge impression on Nora. Of course, she eventually has to go back home, so she doesn't think she'll ever see him again. She goes to college, graduates, moves to New York City, and gets into a relationship with a somewhat boring but reliable and sweet guy who works in the insurance industry. Meanwhile, she has a lot of artistic pursuits, like she paints and she writes, and she's a few years into this steady version of life when Niccolo reappears. Because she works for a small organization that does corporate and financial research, they actually cross paths in a professional context. It turns out that Niccolo knows her boss, and her boss is trying to find out whether Niccolo plans to take over his father's company. Meanwhile, Niccolo is staying at his family's very impressive home in New York City, doing whatever sketchy business things he needs to do. Nora gets involved in a passionate affair with Niccolo, who happens to be married to someone else, and things get really dark. This novel does contain scenes of self-harm and an abusive relationship, so take note of that if you plan to read it. The final novel in the list is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. No list of stories about rich people behaving badly would be complete without The Great Gatsby. Set in the Roaring 20s, this classic is narrated by Nick, who's a young and somewhat naive guy who comes to Long Island from the Midwest to enter the finance industry. His neighbor happens to be the fabulously wealthy Gatsby. Gatsby is known for throwing these totally extravagant, wild parties at his enormous mansion. Nick soon gets pulled into Gatsby's world, which turns out to have some rather sordid secrets beneath the glittering surface. Throw in a murder, and the White Lotus vibes are complete. So that was 5 books you may want to check out if you liked the White Lotus and would like to read something along similar lines. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.